tales of spectres and phantoms have permeated human culture as long back as writing allows us to observe. The first to document this were the ancient Mesopotamians. The land between rivers of what is modern-day Southwest Asia. The ancient Sumerian word for ghost is gidim, and in Akkadian, etemu. The first ghost or human spirit, according to the Babylonian story of Atrahasis, comes from the slaughtered god Wi'ila. The god was sacrificed and his flesh and blood mixed with clay created the first human spirit. The etemu, or gidim, is the divine ingredient for which the human experience is synthesized. Upon death, the flesh and blood of the body would return to clay, back to the earth, and then the etemu would endure and proceed to the underworld. But sometimes they didn't stay there. Sometimes they came back. As documented by the Mesopotamians, this was a very real problem. In earlier Sumerian traditions, it was believed that the spirit of a person remained in the body until the proper obsequies had been performed. An excerpt from a Sumerian composition called The Traveller and His Maiden gives us a glimpse into this tradition. I dipped bread and wiped him with it, from a covered bowl that had never been untied, from a bucket whose rim was unannealed. I poured out water. The ground drank it up. I anointed his body with my sweet-smelling oil. I wrapped up the chair with my new cloth. Wind had entered him. The wind came out. My wanderer from the mountains, henceforth must he lie in the mountain. We see 3 ritual components to allow a ghost to be released from the body here. Number 1, a clay effigy of the deceased, given the resemblance of the departed and anointed with oil and kept in the family home for remembrance. A chair for the ghost. And finally, offerings to take to the next life. Things like food and water, as the netherworld is noted as being an unpleasant experience for sustenance. And even more lavish gifts, should the dead be of royal status. The gidim, or etemu, is then transferred from the body to the chair, where it then waits to go down to the netherworld. However, this was not the most common process. The most common form of burial was to wrap the deceased in a reed mat and place in a pit somewhere within the living quarters, or elsewhere if the corpse harboured disease. Should the dead not receive the correct funeral arrangements or burial, those spirits may be given permission to return to the land of the living to cause trouble. Other ghosts may include those who escaped the underworld in protest of their new abode, and maybe even vengeful spirits of those murdered and not laid to rest properly. In order to deal with these troublesome entities, various spells, amulets, and charms were utilised for the purpose of dispelling these unruly spirits back to the land of the dead.